Hi, this is Minder Chen. Welcome back to the entrepreneurship video series. And this is the second video segment for startup strategy. Last time we introduced the 5-Force model by Michael Porter. We also review the business model environment map, which discussed some of the external factors affecting the business model based on the business model canvas. We ended with the discussion of SWOT analysis, which means look at your own strengths, weaknesses, and the environment's threats and opportunity presented to you, and in order for you to formulate the right strategy to take advantage of the opportunity presented in the environment based on the strengths that you have. And however, if you do have some weakness which prohibits you from taking advantage of the opportunity, if you do know your weakness through collaboration and through self-learning, you can actually make up that deficiency and still be able to pursue the opportunity out there. There are a few other strategies which worth further discussion. The first one is the blue ocean strategy, which was made popular by Professor Chen Kim from Harvard Business School. And the subtitle of the book, this is, by the way, this is the book cover. It's called How to Create Uncontested Market Space. Sometimes we refer that to as white space, and make the competition irrelevant. To some extent, the blue ocean implies that we're really not competing with anybody. We find an unmet market and then deliver a product or service that to serve those unmet needs or ignored customers. And this book title remind me of a quote from The Art of War by Sun Tzu, which is one of the earliest military strategy books from China. Sun Tzu said that troops thrown against the enemy as a grindstone against an egg is an example of a strong beating the weak. Which means that if you have a very strong army and then you're attacking enemy that are really, really weak, then it's almost like that's the enemy, which is like an egg. You're like the grindstone. Then there's really no competition. You will crash the egg. However, if you're a startup and a budding startup firms and you don't have a lot of resources, you're relatively weak, relatively speaking, so you don't want to throw yourself against the grindstone. You want to find some other area that's easier for you to establish your kind of beachhead market. Okay, so The Art of War is really talking about the same thing, but phrased differently. If you're kind of thinking more broadly, you would derive the same conclusion as stated in this book, which say you want to formulate a blue ocean strategy such that your weakness is not a weakness anymore, and you can also take advantage of your strengths in the environment that fits you the best. So let's make a little bit comparison about the red ocean strategy and blue ocean strategy. And red ocean basically means it's a very crowded market with a lot of competitors in the same industry. And the blue ocean is actually a contested market space, and we're making the competition irrelevant. We mentioned those 2 points. Okay, and the reason you can do that is you create and capture some new demands that's ignored by the existing player. existing player only want to explore the existing demand that they're familiar with. You're also in the blue ocean, you also be able to break the value cost trade-off, which means lower cost, lower value, or higher cost, higher value. You try to break that trade-off because traditional thinking is either high value or low cost, but low value. So they're kind of use the so-called either or thinking, and we want to actually break that trade-off. Okay. And another thing is that the blue ocean strategy align the whole system of a firm's activity in pursuit of differentiation and low cost, which means instead of either or, we try to say, hey, we probably can do something lower cost, and which also allow us to differentiate in the crowded existing market. By doing so, this has actually allowed us to actually create value through innovation and provide innovative value. Okay, and in blue ocean strategy, this is called value innovation, which means using a very innovative approach to actually provide value in a contested market space. At the same time, we most likely are able to actually reduce the cost for our product and offering, which allowed us to either lower the price or actually to obtain a higher profit margin due to the low cost. This is a diagram showing the value innovation, which means we want to reduce the cost but at the same time increase the value for our customer. If you can achieve both of this objective, then that's the value innovation. The value add came from the innovation. Okay, it's not purely based on cost down approach or some marketing gimmick and try to upsell to the customer. If you're thinking about Uber and Airbnb in the shared economy space, they can reduce the cost because, for instance, Uber and Airbnb, they don't own any taxi, they don't own any hotels property. That would certainly reduce their costs. However, they can increase the buyer's value by offering a unique experience, such as like Airbnb's living with the local experience, the local culture, etc. So I would consider that as value innovation using the blue ocean strategy. Let's look at the specific approach which allow you to create a blue ocean. There are 4 actions. We're going to go over that one at a time, and then I'll give you an example to illustrate it. First, we try to eliminate some factors that in the industry that may be taken for granted. Okay, which will help us to reduce the cost, by the way. And we may reduce some of the offerings below the industry standard. And once again, this also allowed us to reduce the cost. And you may argue, actually, well, yeah, you're reducing the cost, but what do you add to the value? Sometimes reducing the cost actually reduce the value of your product or service. So the other 2 action is mainly for differentiation and also for adding value. You do want to raise certain factor in your product and offering beyond the industry standard and differentiate yourself among the competitors. You may even create, and this actually rely on creativity of the company. Create certain factors that the current industry has never offered. Okay, and so those are the 4 actions: elimination, reduction, raising, and creation. And eliminate and reduce are the two actions that that basically try to reduce the cost, and raise and create the action try to differentiate and add values. The case we're going to discuss is the case of Cirque du Soleil. It's a Canadian-based firm. It achieved a rapid growth in a decline industry, which is circuit. Okay, with which has actually very low profit margin. Cirque du Soleil create a contested new market space and made the competition irrelevant. They're not really competing with the traditional circuit anymore. If you haven't seen their performance, you can find in this video an example of their performance. You get a little bit idea of what it's all about for our discussion on the next slide. You can certainly go online and just search. There's a lot of other video of their performance. So let's look at their strategy. First of all, the blue line actually is Cirque du Soleil, and the red line, two of them indicating the big player like Ringling Brothers and some other smaller regional circuit. And in this case, the Cirque du Soleil offering a very high level value to service. And we can use the ticket price as an example. For instance, Cirque du Soleil's price is similar to an opera that you may attend, or ballet performance. Much higher ticket price. They offered they have multiple group that perform travel in different city in the U.S. and also internationally. I believe they have performance in Las Vegas. If you're ever in Las Vegas, you should be able to find Cirque du Soleil's performance. Okay, so let's look at the 4 actions. They eliminate star performer, which reduce the cost. They don't do animal shows. There's animal lover who are against circuit industry because of that. So you eliminate that factor. And also raising, training those animals can be very costly. They don't offer aisles concessions. They don't offer multiple show on different arenas, or sometimes they call it ring. I've seen a circuit a long time ago with like 3 ring concurrently having the performance. To some extent, that's really not necessary. If you have one good performance, why you need like 3 ring to confuse people? So they eliminate all of this. They also reduce certain factors, including fun and humor. Traditional circuit has clown that make you happy and tease you or tease themselves, and a lot of circuit performance, traditional circuit performance, are very dangerous, that give you a sense of thrills. And so they did not get rid of it. They still kind of have the humor in it. Some of the performers are actually like acrobat. They are kind of dangerous, so they still have that, but not as extreme as traditional circuit. So that's kind of reduced. Race, they have unique venue. The setting has been specifically designed uniquely for the show, etc. So they raise that bar. And traditional circuit, the platform for their performance are kind of temporarily constructed, because they're traveling a lot to stop in different city for a few days and whatever. So they couldn't afford to build a kind of more expensive and constructed set for their performance. And Cirque du Soleil, most of their show has a theme, a storyline, and they have much more refined viewing environment, really good theaters, and they offer multiple productions. So even you have seen one, you probably will come back to see another one because it's a different. It's almost like a different movie. Okay, that you will go and see movie more than once over a year. And they emphasize a lot since it's kind of like a movie or show, that they emphasize a lot on artistic and the musicals and the dancing part of it, and that's totally new. Traditional circuit doesn't have it, and because of that, Cirque du Soleil has been very, very successful and grow rapidly into the international stage. And this is a good example of the blue ocean strategy. And once again, through elimination and reduction, they're able to reduce some of the costs. At the same time, because of the things they have added, like a theme, the unique venue, a better viewing environment, etc., they add value to the customers. So the buyer value increase, which allow them to charge higher ticket price. Okay, let's switching gear to talk about just another business strategy called generic strategy. This is by Michael Porter's. It's a very simple one, but a useful one. And you can compete in the marketplace first, maybe through cost and cost reduction. Okay, so you can compete by lower cost. That's one strategy. Okay, and you can compete by differentiation. Okay, differentiation usually referring to try to have different kinds of product or services. And through low cost or differentiation from a market perspective, that can be applicable to a broader market or a niche or much narrowed target market. And for startup firm, reducing the cost certainly is possible, but a lot of time you don't have the volume because there's a economy of scale which allowed us to reduce the production cost if you have large quantity in your production of your product or services. And so cost leadership may not be a viable solution. If you can lower the cost, go for it for sure. So most likely, as a startup firm, you need to think about differentiation. Differentiation allow you to tackle the broader market, but particularly differentiation allow you to focus on a particular niche market. So in general, the generic strategy is low-cost strategy, differentiation strategy, and the focus strategy. Focus strategy is particularly looking at identifying a niche market. And in the niche market, you can certainly target the market through lower costs or through differentiation. So there's an overlap between low-cost differentiation with the focus approach. And most likely, I believe for startup firm, you probably are thinking of talking about focus through differentiation, having a focused niche market by differentiation, not by cost reduction. Okay, here I just list this so-called China price or cost. It used to be if you move your production to China, you most likely can cut your cost by 30%. So a lot of Walmart product was produced and acquired in China. That gives you some competitive advantage. However, the labor cost in China has been rising in the last few years. So a lot of companies are moving their production to Indonesia, Vietnam, some of the South Asian countries. Another Michael Porter's kind of business strategy analysis tool is the value chain analysis. Some of you are familiar with this, but just let's look at it just very quickly. You basically look at the major activity that may add value to your business, to your customer. You analyze it and divide it up into some primary activity, which are inbound logistic, purchasing, operation, which can be manufacturing, or in service industry, there's a service operation as well. Outbound logistic, shipping, etc., marketing and sales, and eventually after sales service. This activity conceptually start from inbound logistic eventually to after sales service, but it is happening concurrently within the firm all the time. You can conceptually start with marketing and sales, and once you got the order, then you need to buy the raw material, producing it, ship it out to the customer, and then provide the after sales service. So you can pretty much start from everywhere, anywhere in this case, in this diagram. There are other supporting activities such as the firm's infrastructure, HR function, IT support, and procurement. For instance, in retail store, procurement is an important function, so procurement may actually even consider somewhere in the primary activity. A consulting firm, the HR resource management is a critical function, so you may want to consider that's a primary activity somewhere because HR can recruiting talent, providing training for the talent, assign talent to various consulting job. So this is just a general template, and you may want to customize it based on your industry that your firm is associated with and modify it. This value chain analysis, basically you're going to discuss the value added percentage to the whole company's contribution to your customer. If, for instance, marketing and sales is a critical function, for instance, for Nike, they're focusing more on the marketing and sales, not they outsource their operation. So operation may be outsourced. For startup firm, you may want to focus on the area that you contribute the most. That's really what this value chain analysis is relevant to the startup firm. Break down the business function or activity and find out which area you can contribute the most. When you analyze the value chain of the firm, you may want to look at even a bigger picture, which is the industry-wide value chain. From raw material to intermediate goods to manufacturing of the final product to the marketing and sales, and then eventually to the after-sales service. Some company can do this all within the firm, but some company may focus on just the manufacturing or manufacturing and marketing and sales. When you have a better understanding of your role that you play in the industry-wide value chain, then you can think about your strategy in terms of whether you want to vertically integrate it, integrate, for instance, upstream and downstream, or most likely you want to collaborate with other firms, and through that kind of collaboration, which we call it virtual integration, and the firm may be called virtual cooperation in this case, you can still achieve this kind of integration effect without physically running various segments of the industry in order to provide the service and contribute the value to your customer. In strategic formulation, we need to be flexible. Once again, I'm quoting Sun Tzu's Art of War. Art of War say that just as water retains no constant shape, okay, Water to go into a square container will become square shape. Go to a round container will have the rounded shape. So in warfare, there's no constant condition. Conditions are constantly changing. So he who can adapt, the key word is adapt, his strategy or tactics in relationship to his competitors, okay, will win. So basically, you need to be able to adapt based on the environment and based on the action and reaction of your competitor. Okay, and in business strategy, we talk about so-called intended strategy and emergent strategy. We do formulate strategy more formally. That's intended strategy. However, a lot of time we find out that the intended strategy, a lot of them doesn't work, do not work. Okay, a lot of strategies do not work. So about only 10 or 30% of them became the strategy that we implemented. This is called realized strategy. And however, a lot of realized strategy came out of nowhere, almost by accident. We call it emergent strategy. Those are the things that we just have to do to survive, and then we find out, hey, somehow this may work. That's what I call it pivot or adapt. You are adapting some of the things you're doing and convert it into a viable business model and become your realized strategy. Okay. So in summary, the primary determinant of a realized strategy is actually the emerging strategy here. The decision that emerge from complex process in which individual managers interpret the intended strategy and adapt to the changing external environment. Okay, and which allow you to realize your objective through those emergent things. Give you 3 quick examples. The first one started this way. David McConnell was inspired writer, but his book were not selling, so he decided to give out perfume as a gimmick to sell the book. I guess kind of give a little sample of perfume, and the perfume turned out to be very popular. So eventually, instead of writing novel and selling his book, he founded a California perfume company, and the company eventually changed its name to Avon in 1939. It's a direct marketing system. Actually, it is known as a multi-level marketing system, MLM. Sometimes people call it pyramid selling. It's borderline to pyramid scheme to a certain extent. And now Avon's product is online and in retail outlets, so it's not strictly limited to direct marketing system anymore, and they've been very successful. So from writing a book to sell it, to perfume, to actually a direct marketing sales system, selling probably more than perfume, but all kinds of cosmetics product. The second example is actually a father and son team, Scott and Don, that they were fired from New England Whaler, and they envisioned that a cable television network focused on sports event in just the state of Connecticut. Okay, but gradually their network became very successful, and they changed the name of the firm to the firm is actually, as we know it, is now called ESPN, and they branch out beyond local softball games and demolition derbies, etc. Now they have a lot of other business they're running. ESPN affiliate include ESPN Magazine, ESPN Radio, and they do broadcasting for ABC, etc. The third one, the last one here, started as a radio station that was really cash strapped. So an advertiser who were cash straps gave the radio station some of the overstock inventory can openers to pay off their advertising bill. So the radio station basically just try to sell those can openers through their radio show. They offered $9.95, and it was quickly sold out. And this is really happened purely by just try to survive. And so, but they figured, hey, maybe there's a business here by selling some products through the radio program. So they started a regular show called Sunk Cost Bargainers. And in 1982, Paxson, which is the owner, and a partner launched the so-called home shopping club on a local cable TV station in Florida. And this eventually evolved into something called Home Shopping Network. Some of you may be still familiar with it. They're basically just selling stuff on their program all the time, and some people end up buying a lot of stuff, whether it's useful or not. So they also sell now through the internet. So it is very important that you need to be flexible. Remember, in Lean Startup, we talk about the concept of pivot. Okay, you need to be able to be flexible and pivot based on the new finding, the new reality that you're facing by doing different things. Okay, the next two slides are pretty heavy in content, so I'll try my best to kind of go through that, but it gives you a better sense of various strategic thinking and approach. There's a concept called dynamic capability. Dynamic capability is a firm's ability to integrate, build, and reconfigure their internal and external competence, your ability, to address rapidly changing environment. That's what most of startup firms are facing. The capacity of organization to purposefully create, extend, modify its resource base. So resources show up, okay? And so in this dynamic capability model, we're talking about two things. One is your capability to improve your performance. The second is your capability to deploy and utilize the resource that you have to gain competitive advantage. And if we take the so-called resource-based view, RBV, and we particularly wish that our business, based on our resource that we have, rely on resources that are valuable, rare, which means nobody else can have it, and then inimitable, which means cannot be easily copied. And the resource is not substitutable, which means it cannot be replaced by other resources. So basically mean you're unique. You almost have some kind of monopoly on the resources and be able to utilize the resource to your advantage. And that would be the best case scenario. Okay. So the core capability is another concept, which means you always need to look at your own capability, not just the capability, but the core capability, and hopefully the core capability is kind of unique, which allow you to differentiate. The product and offering may change over time, but a lot of time the core capability stay relatively stable. And the core capability allow you to bundle and integrate your capabilities and the resource together to achieve competitive advantage, either by sustaining your competitive advantage or gaining competitive advantage over other competitor. When we talk about business strategy in competition, the competition is actually fairly dynamic. Porter's five force model doesn't emphasize the dynamic aspect of it, but another scholar, Mingzhi Chen, which I personally know him, is a professor at University of Virginia, came up with this dynamic competitions model, which I like a lot, because it's actually based on a lot of Chinese military strategy philosophy. So we're going to go over this just a little bit. If you're a startup firm, you are the initiator. You through your own strategy formulation, you take certain action. The action may have a little bit narrow scope. You may want some of your action to be visible to the customer, but hopefully invisible to your competitor. And your strategy may be, or action may be, difficult for other people to follow or to copy. And you try to emphasize the speed of the action, and take the action with good timing. And there's a so-called response barrier, which means that you try to build some barrier, make it difficult for other people to respond to your actions. And existing competitor, which are the so-called defender here, the defender will respond to your action, but they have to first go through the 3 steps. They need to be aware of your action and strategy, and they need to be motivated to respond, and then they need to be able and capable of responding. And so certainly when they respond, the initiator may respond as well. The typical response may be cutting the cost, okay, or filing some lawsuit against you for IP violation, if they can find some IP violation case. And in order to respond to response, there's 3 kind of approach. One is thrust, which is really the frontal attack, respond directly. However, you can also respond, particularly if you're relatively small, through a strategy called gambit. Gambit basically means you're kind of give up certain territory, but at the same time gaining some advantage in another area. And third, not the last, is called feint, which means you basically pretend maybe you're protecting certain area, but that's not really area. You try to establish your beachfront, but you try to force actually your competitor to allocate resources to fend out that particular area that you pretend you are getting into. At the same time, your true market is somewhere else. Okay, that can be called feint. And eventually depends on how you take the action, what strategy you use, and how your competitor will respond, and how you respond to the response, will determine the performance of your firm. In conclusion, I'm using actually a not so academic article from Costco's Connections, which is their magazine. I found a little article which is describing the auto war again. He summarized it pretty nicely into 10 principles to the winning of competition. One is fight for knowledge. This means study the marketplace, collect business intelligence. And the second is called be invincible. I interpret this using the effectuation logic, which means identify the affordable loss. Okay, which means that you can afford the loss so you can survive and succeed in the long term. Number 3, attain strategic superiority. If you're a startup firm, you don't have a lot of resources, the only way you can attain strategic superiority is actually is to be focused. Because when you focus on a smaller niche market, you can afford to allocate your limited resources to that niche market. Since it's a very narrow target market, relatively the resource you allocated will be abundant by comparing to the large company who spread their resources around. So the resource for that area can be less than your allocation of the resources. So focus is the way to attain strategic superiority, particularly when you're small comparing to your competitor. We try to build a cohesive team, which means try to recruit talented people. We try to coordinate the momentum, the timing for the attack. So timing is important. When do you launch your new product? Okay, you need to find the right moment. Ensure solid organization. That's execution and coordination. Plan by surprise. Okay, this is actually requires some creativity. Okay, plan by surprise. You can interpret in 2 different ways. One is like plan a surprise attack. That's one. Another one is that if there's any surprise, remember in effectuation we have something called lemonade principle, which means that you try to leverage the contingency. Okay. Number 8, be flexible. Similar to the previous one is called leverage contingency. Try to be flexible. Okay, depends on the changing condition environment, and you want to be flexible. Number 9, seek knowledge. This is similar to business intelligence. You constantly try to seek knowledge of your environment. In Lean Startup approach, we basically this is actually to experiment. Okay, through experimentation, you find out more about the environment. Number 10, now the last one, develop effective communication. Communicate to your employee, communicate to your strategic partner, communicate constantly with your customer. So that is the winning formula competition. Okay, that's all for startup strategy. We conclude this startup strategy with the second segment of the video. So I'll see you next time with some additional topic on entrepreneurship. Thank you. Bye-bye.